This video was made possible thanks to the support of our amazing patrons. We couldn't do this without you.
Don't forget that you can support the channel for free and receive 10% off orders over $10 of Flipside Gaming by using the promo code Affinity at the checkout. Or if TCG Player or Magic Madhouse are more your thing, then be sure to place your order through our affiliate links in the description. Once again, at no extra cost to yourselves.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another EDH gameplay video brought to you by Affinity for Commander. My name is Martin.
And my name is Alex.
Today we are joined by two very special guests, Benny and Jeffrey. Benny you may recognise as both a writer for Star City Games and the guy who literally wrote the book on Commander. He has been writing professional content about the game since the 1990s and knows everything there is to know about the game, so be sure to check out his weekly articles over at starcitygames.com.
And our other player Jeffrey is a senior graphics designer over at Channel Fireball and is also the creator of the absolutely stunning animated card art that you can find for free over on his Twitter. He has created content for the Professor over at Tolarian Community College, the Command Zone, and many other top content creators, so you know that the quality of his work is legit.
I'll leave links to both Jeffrey and Benny's social media accounts in the description, so be sure to check them out. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at those opening hands. I'm playing my Gishath Son's Avatar Dinosaur Tribal deck, and keep an opening hand consisting of Herald's Horn, Decimate, Rampaging Brontodon, Temple of Triumph, Mosswort Bridge, Myriad Landscape, and Rogue's Passage.
I am playing my Kynaios, Son of Yawgmoth Devotion to Black deck, and keep an opening hand of Thrall Parasite, Sword of the Animist, Bontu's Monument, Obnixilis Reignited, Pontiff of Blight, and 2 Snow-Covered Swamps.
Benny is playing his Kynaios and Tiro of Melentis Good Stuff deck, and keeps an opening hand containing Swan Song, Sakura Tribe Elder, Kaikar Wind's Fury, Wrath of God, Frontier Bivouac, Temple of Triumph, and the Plains.
And finally, Jeffrey is playing his Kalemne Disciple of Iros Giant Tribal deck. His opening hand is made up of Sword of Vengeance, War Chief Giant, Rout, Hammerfist Giant, 2 Plains, and a Mountain.
Benny wins the die roll and starts the game off by playing Frontier Bivouac. He then passes to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey plays a Mountain and passes the turn.
I play Temple of Triumph, keeping the top card of my library where it is, and end my turn.
I play a Snow-Covered Swamp and then cast Thrall Parasite. With nothing more to do, I pass to Benny.
Benny plays a Plains and casts Sakura Tribe Elder. He then passes to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey plays Clifftop Retreat and passes the turn.
I play Rogue's Passage and cast Boros Signet before ending my turn.
I play another Snowy Swamp and cast Sword of the Animist. Moving to combat, I attack Martin with my Thrall, dealing him 1 damage and then pass to Benny. Benny responds by sacrificing his Elder, searching his library for a forest and putting it into play tapped. It then proceeds to his turn.
Benny plays Ralgrim Triome and passes the turn.
Jeffrey plays a Plains and casts Sword of Vengeance. He then ends his turn.
I begin my turn by casting Herald's Horn, naming Dinosaur. Next I play Myriad Landscape and pass to Alex.
I equip my sword to my Thrall Parasite and then move to combat. I attack Martin, dealing him 2 damage and put a swamp into play with my sword's ability. Out of mana, I pass the turn. Benny responds by flashing in Nimble Obstructionist and then moves to his turn.
Benny plays Temple of Triumph, leaving the top card of his library where it is, and then casts his commander, Kynaios and Tiro of Melentis. Moving to combat, Benny attacks Alex with his Bird Wizard, dealing him 3 damage and then moves to his end step. Kynaios and Trio's ability triggers, allowing Benny to draw and then put a Selesnya Sanctuary onto the battlefield. He returns his temple to his hand with the Sanctuary's ability, and his commander's ability resolves for everybody else. Jeffrey plays Windscarred Crag, gaining a life. I play Mosswort Bridge, exiling one of the top 4 cards of my library beneath it, and Alex draws a card. Benny then ends his turn.
Jeffrey plays a Plains and then casts his commander, Kalemne, Disciple of Iroas. With nothing more to do, Jeffrey passes to Martin.
I look at the top card of my library with Herald's Horn, choose not to reveal it, and draw for turn. Next I cast Miari's Wake, causing the rest of the table to groan deeply. Satisfied with their responses, I pass the turn.
I play a Snow-Covered Swamp and then move to combat. I once again attack Martin with my Thrall, leading him to question whether or not I have a personal vendetta against him, and put a swamp into play with my Sword of the Animist. In my second main phase, I cast Bontu's Monument, paying 1 for Thrall Parasite's Extort ability. Each of my opponents lose a life, I gain 3, and then end my turn.
Benny replays his Temple of Triumph, leaving the top card of his library where it is, and then casts Crush Contraband. He exiles my Miari's Wake and Alex's Bontu's Monument, and then moves to combat. Benny once again attacks Alex with his Nimble Obstructionist, dealing him 3 damage, and moves to his end step. Here he draws, putting Mystic Monastery into play, and the rest of us choose to draw a card. Benny then passes to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey plays Sacred Foundry, paying 2 life to have it enter untapped. Next he equips his Sword of Vengeance to Kalemne, casts 1 Power Stone, and moves to combat. Jeffrey attacks me with his commander, dealing me 10 damage due to her double strike, and passes the turn.
I once again choose not to reveal the top card of my library, drawing as normal, and then play a forest. Next I cast Rampaging Brontodon, and end my turn.
I play a Snowy Swamp and then cast Commander's Sphere. I extort the spell with Thrall Parasite, draining a life from everybody else, and then cast Lightning Greaves, extorting once again. Next I equip my Greaves to my Thrall, and then pass to Benny.
Benny casts Black Blade Reforged, and equips the sword to his commander, making it a 9/15. Eek! Moving to combat, Benny continues his tradition of attacking Alex with his Obstructionist, and then moves to his end step. He draws, missing his land drop, and everybody else draws as well. Finished, Benny passes the turn.
Jeffrey plays a mountain and casts War Chief Giant. He gains an experience counter thanks to Kalemne, and ends his turn.
I choose not to reveal the top card of my library, drawing normally, and cast Lesnia's Signet. Next I cast Xenagos, God of Revels, causing everybody to express their hatred towards my deck, and move to combat. Here I use Xenagos' ability to double my Brontodon's power and toughness, and its ability then triggers, giving it a further +6/+6. I then attack Benny with the 2020 Trampling Dino, and he blocks with his commander. The 15 toughness lovers are squashed underneath the might of my lizard, and Benny takes 5 damage. Happy with my turn, I pass to Alex.
I play a Snowy Swamp, tap 4 lands, and pay 6 life to cast my commander, Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. Next I move my Lightning Greaves over to Kirik and move to combat, where I once again attack Martin with my Thrall Parasite. I search my library for a Snow-Covered Swamp, put it into play tapped, and move to my second main phase. Here I pay 2 life to help cast Obnixilis Reignited, putting a +1/+1 counter on my commander, and pay a further 2 life to extort the spell with my Thrall's ability. My opponents all lose life and I gain 3, meaning that paying life to extort a card now nets me a life, which is pretty good going to be honest. Next I activate Obnixilis' -3 ability to destroy Martin's Brontodon, and then pass the turn. Benny responds by casting Corrosive Grip, destroying Martin's Herald's Horn, and then proceeds to his turn.
Benny plays a Plains and moves to combat. He attacks Obnixilis with his Nimble Obstructionist, lowering the Planeswalker's loyalty to 0, and then moves to his post-combat main phase. Here he casts Wrath of God, wiping the board of creatures, and then casts Feyburrow Elder before ending his turn.
Jeffrey begins his turn by recasting his commander, and equips his Sword of Vengeance to the Giantess. Moving to combat, he attacks Martin with Kalemne, dealing him 12 damage, and then passes the turn to Martin.
I start my turn by casting my commander, Gishath, Sun's Avatar, and then move to combat. I target my commander with Xenagos' ability, giving her 14 power, and attack Benny with my Scaly Girl. Benny declares no blocks, taking all the damage, and I reveal the top 14 cards of my library with Gishath's ability. I put Zetalpa, Primal Dawn, Kinjali's Sunwing, Burning Sun's Avatar and Zakama, Primal Calamity into play this way, dealing 3 damage to Jeffrey and 3 damage to Benny's Treefolk with the Burning Sun's Avatar's ability. Satisfied with my board state, I pass the turn.
In my turn, I cast Damnation, wiping the board of all creatures apart from the indestructible Zetalpa. Next I cast Dark Petition, searching my library for a card before putting it into my hand, and end my turn.
Benny begins his turn by casting Dragon Lord Dramoka and equips his Black Blade to the Elder Dragon. With nothing more to do, Benny passes to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey plays a mountain and casts Kalemne for the 3rd time this game. Out of mana, he passes the turn.
In my turn I cast Decimate, targeting Kalemne, Black Blade Reforged, one of Alex's swamps and Xenagos. Each of the targets other than my god are destroyed given that he is indestructible, and I cast Samut the Tested. I use her +1 ability targeting Zetalpa and then move to combat, targeting my Pterodactyl with Xenagos' ability. I attack Jeffrey with my 8 power double striking dinosaur, and he responds by casting Deflecting Palm, redirecting the damage back at me. I haven't been the victim of that card since it was legal in Standard. Barely alive, I end my turn.
I play a snow-covered swamp and cast Cryptghast. I then pay 6 life to recast my commander and immediately equip my boots to the Spiky Gentleman. Not yet finished, I pay 2 life to cast Fond of Agonies, paying a further 2 life to extort the spell. I put a +1/+1 counter on Kirik, each of my opponents loses a life, and I gain 3. Martin's life total is reduced to 0, knocking him out of the game, and I pay 4 life to help cast Grey Merchant of Asphodel, extorting the spell once again. I put another +1/+1 counter on my commander, put 4 blood counters on my altar, and Gary drains each of my opponents for 7. I gain 14 life, then move to combat, attacking Jeffrey with Kirik. He takes 4 damage, I gain 4 life from my commander's lifelink, and I then pass to Benny.
Benny begins his turn by recasting his commander and then moves to combat. He attacks Alex with Jamoka, dealing him 5 damage and gaining 5 life from her lifelink. Moving to his end step, Benny draws of his commander's ability, and so do Jeffrey and Alex. Benny then passes the turn.
Jeffrey casts Desolation Giant, taking the spell to destroy every other creature on the battlefield. He then attaches his Sword of Vengeance to the giant and moves to combat, attacking me with a sword-wielding creature. I take 5 damage and Jeffrey ends his turn.
Alex plays a Chilly Swamp and once again pays 6 life to help cast his commander. He puts 6 blood counters on his font, equips his shoes to Kirik and pays a further 4 life to cast Pontiff of Blight. Alex puts 4 more blood counters on Font of Agonies and passes to Benny.
Benny starts his turn by casting Kaikar Wind's Fury, followed by Selfless Spirit. Next he casts Manascape Refractor, triggering Kaikar, making him a 1/1 spirit with flying, and then passes the turn.
Jeffrey casts Linvala the Preserver, completely ruining the giant tribal aspect of his deck. Shame on you, Jeffrey. Linvala's ability triggers, making him a 3/3 angel with flying, and Jeffrey moves his sword over to Linvala. Moving to combat, he attacks Alex with his sword-wielding angel, dealing him 7 damage, and then ends his turn.
I pay 2 life and cast Yawgmoth's Vile Offering, extorting the spell twice with my Pontiff and Kirik. I put a +1/+1 counter on my commander, and Benny responds to the spell by casting Swan Song, countering it and gifting me a 2/2 bird with flying. The audacity! Not to be deterred, I remove 4 counters from my font to destroy Selfless Spirit, to which Benny responds by sacrificing the ghost to give all his creatures indestructible. I respond to this by removing another 4 counters from the font to destroy Kaikar, and then move to combat. I attack Benny with Kirik, and he blocks with a spirit, forgetting that it is currently indestructible. I gain 4 life from Kirik's lifelink, and then pass to Benny.
Benny once again recasts his commander, plays Reflecting Pool, and then casts Drake Haven. Moving to his end step, Benny draws, Jeffrey draws, and Alex draws, and Benny passes the turn.
Jeffrey plays a Plains and then moves to combat. He attacks me with both of his creatures and I block the Desolation Giant with my bird, taking 7 damage from the Trampoly Angel. In his post-combat main phase, Jeffrey casts Chandra's Ignition, having Linvala deal 7 damage to each other creature and each of his opponents. I respond by paying 4 life to cast Force of Despair, which does nothing except putting 4 blood counters on my font and allows me to drain my opponents for 1 with a cheeky Extort trigger. I am then knocked out of the game, Benny's board is wiped, and his health is reduced to 3. Not yet finished, Jeffrey casts Giant Harbinger, searching his library for Inferno Titan and puts it on top of his library. Benny responds by cycling Ominous Seas, but is unable to pay the 1 for Drake Haven. Sad times. Jeffrey then ends his turn.
Benny casts Kosali Pride Mage and moves to his end step. He prays to his commander, begging them to let him draw a card that will save him, and Jeffrey draws his Titan. Benny then passes to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey starts his turn by casting Flame Shadow Conjuring, and Benny sacrifices his Pride Mage to destroy the pesky enchantment. Not to be deterred, Jeffrey casts Inferno Titan, dealing Benny 3 damage with his ETB. Not a fancy victory, but a victory nonetheless.
Well, that's it for another game. Thank you so much to Benny and Jeffrey for joining us, we had a really great time. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, the like button and the bell icon if you enjoyed this video, as it helps out the channel a lot. Also, feel free to leave us a comment, I read every one, and check out our social media accounts, I've left links to them in the description. That's all for now though, we'll see you next time.